Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bill Brenner, VP of Content Strategy at Cyber Risk Alliance and Security Weekly. And here we are, we're on the final stretch of RSA 2023. And for me, I can't think of a better way to end it than talking about what's going on at Cisco Talus. And to do that, I'm joined with Nick Biasini, Head of Outreach for Cisco Talus. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
So let's dive right in. So talk to me about some of the key trends you're seeing from within Talus as you explore that threat landscape on behalf of customers. And
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we're seeing right now is, with remote work and hybrid work here to stay, the attack surface is really expanding at an incredible rate. Now you have, users using a bunch of disparate systems. They all have a bunch of disparate technology stacks, and they're connecting from a bunch of disparate locations all around the globe. You're dealing with a very, very challenging environment. And to make things worse, what we're seeing from an adversary perspective is kind of a collapsing, right? You see all of these groups are all using the same offensive security tools, the same open source, the same cracked versions. You have everybody's using Cobalt Strike, Brute Ratel. They're all using whatever in vogue offensive security framework is out there. And it makes it very difficult from a defender's perspective, because if you get an alert that's, say, a Cobalt Strike beacon, right, gets blocked, but is that a script kiddie dropping a crypto miner? Is it an extortion or a ransomware group looking for a foothold into your enterprise? Is it a nation state looking to launch an espionage campaign, right? It's very difficult to tell who's actually behind the keyboard and what they're trying to do. And to make things worse, they're living off the land increasingly, so they're not doing the things that used to be easy, like downloading malware. Now it's like the goal is get onto a system, phish credentials, log in, and start acting like a normal user. Use the tools that are there. Make use of the things that are already available on the systems, and it's tough out there.
blending in. And it comes at it goes without saying we live in interesting times. Why do we, this hybrid approach, we would have gotten here without the pandemic, but the pandemic definitely was gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, and it presents a lot of unique challenges, right? How do you keep track of users that are logging in from 50 different locations and using their kids are picking up their laptops and doing who knows what's, but there's just lots of challenges associated
Shadow
with
IT.
it. Yep.
Yeah, so, and we also have, Ukraine, China being China, with attacks coming from there. So let's talk for a little bit about where Talus sees most of this attack activity coming from. So the folks who, are phishing and pretending to be normal users, is it all, there's that portion that they're just doing it to make money, but there's a lot of geopolitical stuff going on to motivate people. So what are you seeing on that, to that regard?
So from a geopolitical stance, we see the same actors doing the same attacks that they normally would. The thing that really stands out, again, is it's not necessarily about active exploitation or malware deployment. It's about getting credentials. And we talked about remote work. A big part of that is everyone has VPN access. So now if you're able to compromise a user, you can log into a VPN and do way more damage in a much more covert way than trying to do it by knocking over a system and exploiting it actively.
And in the meantime, we have companies that struggle when it comes to things like incident response, managing this suddenly enormous cloud infrastructure in front of them. And I know that Cisco did some research, and one of the numbers that leapt out at me was only 15% expressing this readiness, ransomware readiness. So talk a bit about that.
It's tough. I mean, the basics really make a difference. So it's very difficult to be ready and prepared for those types of attacks when you don't even understand the assets that you're responsible for. I mean, how can you adequately protect a network when you don't even know all of the devices that you're supposed to protect? There's just a lot of challenges, not to mention there's a massive skills shortage. It is incredibly difficult to find people to be able to manage and run these systems, and you're left with a decision of very difficultly trying to find and maintain talent, or using managed service providers and trying to find the balance of a way to be ready when these actors inevitably come knocking on your door. I mean, that's the other thing is increasingly, because we are seeing coalescing of tools, it's not about the tools anymore. It's about the actors behind the tools. I mean, we're operating largely in a mercenary landscape right now, and the sooner people realize that, the better.
Yeah. Now, every RSA, there's a hype focal point. So the year of zero trust, the year of ransomware, which I think was several RSAs in a row. And here we still are. This year, AI. Not because it's new, but because things like ChatGPT have further democratized the use of it. And
Absolutely.
so this is a two-pronged question. So there's the darkness and the light. On the darkness end of things, talk about how you see adversaries using AI right now to do all the things that you have just spoken about in terms of getting credentials. And
So it's interesting. So I kind of like to decouple the two things. So there's AI, which is a very broad term, and then there's the language models like the ChatGPT things. ChatGPT,
generative AI.
Yeah, generative AI. So ChatGPT and generative AI, to me, doesn't fundamentally change the landscape in any way. It does create the ability for adversaries to do things like write really convincing lures and develop very effective spear phishing, but you just have a lure, you just have a spearfish, you still have to build the infrastructure, you still have to get it in front of the user, you still have to weaponize the access. ChatGPT doesn't help you with any of that. There is no net benefit to it. Again, we have sophisticated lures today. We have very good spearfishing techniques today. All it's going to do is provide maybe some more access to more users, but it doesn't fundamentally change the challenges that we face in security. It's just going to be more of the same of what we're already seeing. Now, if you're talking specifically about AI, I think there is potential for that to have a very large impact, but not in the ChatGPT generative AI aspect. More of, you have the ability to train artificial intelligence on your own data set and make use of it. If you were to take an AI and train it heavily on vulnerability data and exploit data, you potentially could have a very powerful tool, but it is not something that everyone is going to have access to. This is only going to be your state-sponsored groups, enterprises with very deep pockets. This stuff is extraordinarily expensive to actually use. It will have an impact, but it is not going to be democratically distributed. It's going to be left to a very, very small group of adversaries.
So, based on everything that you've been seeing, how would you, there's that 15% readiness statistic, but by and large, what are your thoughts on how security as an industry is doing? Are we winning this battle? Are we losing it? My sense is,
I feel like it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I feel like we're generally the overall security intelligence and security hygiene of average users we see is rising. Users are getting better at understanding how to operate on devices. The flip side of that is social engineering is alarmingly effective and easy. And I'm just seeing so much of it that it causes me some concern. So yes, I think we are getting better at preventing things like active exploitation and the ability to compromise systems from the outside. We're getting better at it, but we're falling down when it comes to educating our users to not facilitate the compromise that's necessary. So now, the bad guys increasingly, they're going to call you on the phone. They're going to tug at your heartstrings. They're going to threaten you. They're going to figure out a way to get you to do what they need. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of positive on the horizon there.
Any advice in the face of that?
Make sure that you really concentrate on social engineering in your user education. You know, we did a really, really good job of saying, you know, don't click links, don't open attachments, but we didn't say don't respond to text messages and don't pick up the phone. And that's kind of where we are now, is they're going to go after your text.
That's where phishing has moved. It's gone to the browser, it's gone to text.
It's going away from, it's going to the areas where we didn't spend 2 decades telling users, don't do that.
Yep. All right. That is a perfect place to end it. Pleasure having you here.
Yeah, it's great being here.
And to everyone tuning in, for those who are traveling, be safe, be well, and thank you for joining us.